The Vasconcelos mansion gleamed under the afternoon sun, its iron gates and white walls rising like a modern castle in the heart of Rio de Janeiro's South Zone. But within that splendor, something was deeply wrong. Nadia Gomes, 42 years old with a serene gaze sculpted by life, held the mop with calloused hands, cleaning the frigid marble of the living room. The scent of lavender hung in the air, mixed with the distant sound of a television playing in some room of the house. She took a deep breath, trying to ignore the tension she'd felt since stepping foot into the place 3 days earlier. Everything seemed too perfect, too quiet, too empty. Then a scream tore through the silence. A sharp, childish cry, muffled by something Nadia couldn't immediately identify. Her heart leaped. She dropped the mop, jumped up impulsively, and ran towards the sound. Her footsteps echoed down the long hallway, decorated with enormous paintings and mirrors that reflected her desperate dash. The nursery door was ajar. Nadia pushed it open forcefully and was met with a scene that froze her blood. Claudia, the nanny, was gripping the boy's arm tightly. Theo, only 6 years old, had eyes wide with terror, his cheeks wet with tears. His small body trembled, huddled like a wounded bird. The white woman, with her straight hair pulled back in a perfect bun, turned abruptly to Nadia with a barely disguised expression of fury. "What do you want here?" Claudia's voice was sharp, like a blade hidden in silk. Nadia took a deep breath. She felt the weight of the situation fall upon her shoulders, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from the boy. I heard a scream. I just came to see if everything was okay." Claudia let go of Theo's arm with a sudden movement and adjusted her blouse, recomposing her mask of professionalism. Everything was under control. He was having a tantrum. Nothing I can't handle myself. But Theo wasn't looking at the nanny. He was looking at Nadia with a gaze that needed no words, a look that pleaded for help. Before continuing, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel for heartwarming stories every day. Nadia swallowed hard and nodded slowly, pretending to believe. She left the room with controlled steps, but her heart was pounding like a runaway drum. She returned to the living room, picked up the mop, and continued cleaning, but her hands trembled. She knew that kind of fear. She had seen it before. In childhood, in her neighborhood, in houses where children grew up without a voice. And now, here, in this luxurious mansion, she saw the same terror in the eyes of a boy who should be laughing, playing, living. Nadia Gomes wasn't a woman of many words, but she had a sharp instinct and a heart that couldn't feign indifference. A widow for 7 years, a mother to a teenager named Lais, she had accepted this temporary job because she needed it. Bills didn't wait, and dignity, however immense, didn't pay the rent. But now, as she scrubbed that cold floor, she was beginning to understand that perhaps she had been placed there for a greater reason. The rest of the day passed slowly. Augusto Vasconcelos, the owner of the house, arrived in the late afternoon, impeccably dressed, his phone glued to his ear, his steps hurried. He didn't even glance at Nadia. To him, she was just part of the decor, another functional piece. Invisible, Claudia, on the other hand, watched her closely, a cold, calculating gaze. Nadia felt the weight of that stare and knew in that instant that things were far from over. When night fell and Nadia finally returned home, climbing the hill where she lived, the image of the boy wouldn't leave her mind. Lais was waiting for her in the living room, studying for a test. The girl looked up and noticed her mother's expression. "Is everything okay, Mom?" Nadia forced a smile, stroked her daughter's hair, and lied. "Yes, honey, just tired." But it wasn't just tiredness. It was an old, familiar ache, returning to hurt. The pain of seeing injustice happen before her eyes and being unable to do anything. Yet, while making dinner, Nadia looked out the window and saw the city lights twinkling below. And she thought of the boy trapped in that glass mansion. She thought of the scream. She thought of the fear. And she promised herself that somehow she would find a way to help, because Nadia Gomez was invisible to many. But to those who needed her, she was always the light no one expected to find in the dark. Nadia woke up every day at 5 in the morning, not because she liked it, but because life had taught her that those who sleep late miss out. The house where she lived was simple but clean. 3 small rooms in an alley on the hill, with walls painted a faded yellow, and a window overlooking a yard full of purple bougainvillea. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mixed with the aroma of warm bread she bought at the corner bakery. Lais was still asleep, wrapped in a thin sheet, breathing softly. Nadia always paused at her daughter's bedroom door before leaving, just to see her, to make sure she was there, alive, safe. That silent ritual was her form of prayer. She put on her simple uniform, black pants, white blouse, and tied her hair in a low bun. In the small hallway mirror, she saw a tired but dignified woman. A woman who didn't beg, who didn't bow her head, who didn't accept crumbs disguised as favors. Nadia knew who she was, and she knew her worth. The commute to the Vasconcelos mansion took an hour and a half. 2 crowded buses, one rickety, the other smelling of diesel. She stood, holding her canvas bag on her lap, looking out the window as the sun slowly rose over the divided city. She saw the houses clustered on the hill, the crooked antennas, the clothes on the line. And down below, gleaming like a distant dream, she saw the glass skyscrapers, the imported cars, the smooth asphalt. 2 worlds, 2 realities. And Nadia, like so many other women, moved between them every day, carrying on her shoulders the invisible weight of those who sustain with their own hands what others merely consume. When she arrived at the mansion, the electronic gate opened with a soft hum. She entered through the back door, always, never the front. That was the unwritten rule. The kitchen was enormous, filled with gleaming appliances that seemed never to have been used. Nadia put her bag in a cupboard, put on her apron, and began her work. Sweep, mop, dust, organize, wash, repeat. Nadia's hands knew every corner of that house. She knew where the stubborn stains were on the marble, the crevices where dust hid, the windows that reflected the afternoon light. She worked in silence with the same attention she put into everything in her life, not out of obligation, but out of respect. Respect for her own work, respect for herself. But during her breaks, when she passed the hallway leading to Theo's room, Nadia felt a pang in her chest. The boy was always too quiet. He never played in the yard. He never ran around the house. Claudia kept him there, inside that room decorated with toys no one touched, as if he were a porcelain doll that couldn't break. One morning, while cleaning the living room, Nadia heard a soft, crying sound. She stopped. She listened. It was coming from the room again. But this time, it wasn't a scream. It was a contained, stifled cry, as if the boy were afraid of being heard. She approached slowly, her heart aching. The door was closed. Nadia pressed her ear to the wood and heard Claudia's voice, cold and impatient. "Stop crying, boys don't cry. Stop it now." The crying didn't stop. Then came the sound of a slap. Sharp, clear, unmistakable. Nadia closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her hands trembled. She wanted to go in, wanted to scream, wanted to snatch that boy away from there, but she knew she couldn't. Not yet. She went back to the living room, but she couldn't work with the same peace of mind. Every movement was mechanical, automatic. Her head was buzzing. Her heart was bleeding. When Augusto arrived late in the afternoon, Nadia gathered all the courage she had and approached him. "Mr. Augusto, can I speak with you for a minute?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "Go ahead." "It's about Theo, sir. I think he's not doing well." Augusto finally looked at her, but not with interest, with irritation. "What do you mean?" Nadia swallowed hard. "I think the nanny, she treats him a bit badly, you know? I heard some strange noises. I saw him crying." Augusto interrupted her with a curt gesture. "Claudia is a professional. She's been taking care of my son for 2 years. You've been here for 3 days. So with all due respect, I think you should focus on your job and leave my son's upbringing to someone who knows what they're doing." The words were like stabs. Nadia felt her face burn, but not from shame, from anger, from helplessness. She lowered her head, murmured an "excuse me," and returned to her work. But something had changed inside her. Something had awakened, because Nadia Gomes might have been just a cleaner to the world. But to herself, she was much more. She was a mother. She was a daughter. She was a sister. She was a woman. And she knew how to recognize a child's pain when she saw it. And she wasn't going to give up. The Vasconcelos mansion was a place where people lived together without seeing each other. Augusto spent his days locked in his office or traveling for meetings. Claudia ruled the upper floor with an iron fist, and Theo was a ghost in his own home, a silent boy who walked on tiptoe as if afraid to exist. Nadia observed everything. She had learned over the years the art of being invisible, and this invisibility gave her access to things no one else saw. She saw Theo's meals, always rushed, with cold food and little love. She saw the boy's clothes, always impeccable, but without any sign of play. She saw the untouched toys, arranged like in a display case, and she saw Claudia, the nanny everyone thought was perfect. Claudia was meticulous. She spoke softly, dressed with discreet elegance, smiled when necessary. In Augusto's eyes, she was irreproachable. But Nadia knew that type of person, the kind who uses a mask of perfection to hide cruelty. One afternoon, while folding clothes in the laundry room, Nadia overheard a conversation in the hallway. It was Claudia on the phone. "No, he's not a problem. I know how to handle spoiled children. You just have to show them who's in charge." Her voice was cold, mechanical. Nadia stopped folding and stood still, her heart aching. The father doesn't even notice. He barely looks at his son. So I do what needs to be done. Discipline. That's what he needs. Nadia felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't discipline, it was control. It was violence disguised as education. In the following days, Nadia began to pay closer attention. She observed Theo's schedule, his movements, his reactions. The boy avoided Claudia whenever possible. When she called him, he went slowly, reluctantly. When she left, he breathed a sigh of relief. One morning, while cleaning the bathroom on the second floor, Nadia saw something that took her breath away. Theo was in his underwear, changing clothes, and on his left arm there was a purple mark, small, round, as if someone had squeezed hard. Nadia pretended not to see. She couldn't scare the boy, but the image stayed etched in her mind like a burn. That night, when she returned home, Nadia could barely eat. Lais noticed and asked, "Mom, what's happening in that house?" Nadia sighed. "There's a child suffering, daughter, and I don't know what to do." Lais, at 15, with a heart she'd inherited from her mother, took her hand. "You always know, Mom. You just need to trust yourself." But trust wasn't enough. Nadia needed proof. She needed a plan. Because she knew no one would believe the word of a cleaner against that of a well-spoken, certified nanny. The next day, Nadia arrived earlier. The house was silent. She began to work, but kept her ears alert. That's when she heard it again. The crying. Soft, muffled, coming from Theo's room. This time, Nadia didn't hesitate. She went to the door and knocked lightly. "Claudia, can I come in?" Silence. Then the nanny's icy voice. "What do you want?" "Just came to see if you needed anything." "You don't. Go back to your work." Nadia stood there, frozen. She heard the tense silence on the other side of the door. She heard the fear, and she knew this was going to end badly. But not for her, for Claudia. Because fate has a curious way of sorting things out. And in this house of perfect appearances, the truth was about to explode. The storm arrived on a Thursday night, with a heavy sky and thunder echoing over the city. Nadia was in the kitchen, washing the last pot from dinner, when she heard the scream. It wasn't just any scream. It was a scream of pain, of desperation, of someone who couldn't take it anymore. She dropped everything and ran. The hallway seemed endless. Her footsteps echoed on the cold marble as her heart raced. Theo's bedroom door was open, and inside, the scene Nadia would never forget. Claudia was holding the boy by the shoulders, shaking him hard. Her face was red, her eyes filled with rage. Theo was crying, his small body trembling, his little arms trying to protect himself. "I told you to stop wetting the bed. You're not a baby. You're useless." Nadia didn't think, she just acted. She burst into the room like a whirlwind, pulled Claudia back and placed herself between her and the boy. "Get out of the way!" Claudia screamed beside herself. "You're not touching him anymore." Nadia's voice was firm, trembling with emotion, but firm. "Who do you think you are? A cleaner trying to lecture me? I'm the person who's watching you hurt a child, and I won't let you." Claudia lunged forward, but Nadia didn't back down. She held Theo close, her hand trembling as she grabbed her phone. "I'm calling the police." "You won't dare." "Oh, I will." And she did. Claudia froze for a moment. Then she tried to pull herself together. She changed her tone, smoothed her clothes, wiped the tears of rage. "You're going to regret this. I'll tell them you're crazy, that you're making it up." But it was too late. The call had been made, and the boy, clutched in Nadia's arms, had finally stopped shaking. When the police arrived, accompanied by a social worker, Augusto arrived too. He entered the house like a hurricane, shouting, demanding explanations. But seeing his son in Nadia's arms, pale, crying, something inside him shattered. What happened here? It was Theo who answered, his voice thin, trembling but clear. "Aunt Nadia saved me." Augusto looked at Claudia, then at Nadia, then at his son, and finally, for the first time in years, he saw. The security camera footage confirmed everything. The social worker reviewed Theo's medical history, bruises, unexplained falls, withdrawn behavior. It all added up. It all made sense. Claudia was removed from the house that very night. She screamed, cried, accused Nadia of a conspiracy, but no one believed her, because the truth has a weight that no lie can carry. Nadia, still in shock, excused herself and went to the kitchen. She sat on the cold floor, leaned her head against the wall and cried. She cried with relief, with exhaustion, with accumulated pain. She cried for Theo. She cried for all the children no one protects. She cried for herself. That's how Augusto found her. He stood in the doorway, speechless. Then, slowly, he approached and crouched beside her. "Thank you." Nadia wiped her tears and looked at him. "I just did what anyone should do. But no one did, only you." And in that silence, heavy with pain and gratitude, something shifted between these two people who, until then, had lived in opposite worlds. The days that followed were strange. The mansion felt different, quieter, heavier, as if the walls still held the echo of the shouts, the tears, the violence that had been unearthed. Nadia continued working, but now with a new weight in her chest. It wasn't regret, it was exhaustion. The exhaustion of someone who fought and won, but still felt the scars of battle. She cleaned the rooms with the same dedication as always, but sometimes she would stop mid-motion, stare into space, and sigh deeply. Theo, on the other hand, wandered the house like a bird just out of its cage. He didn't quite know what to do with his freedom. He stayed close to Nadia whenever he could. When she cleaned the living room, he would sit on the sofa and watch her. When she went to the kitchen, he would follow her. He didn't talk much. He just stayed there nearby, as if her presence were a shield against the world. One morning, as Nadia was washing dishes, Theo slowly approached and tugged at the hem of her apron. "Aunt Nadia." She stopped, dried her hands, and lowered herself to the boy's level. "Yes, my love? Are you leaving?" Nadia's heart ached. "Why are you asking that?" "Because everyone leaves." She held his little face between her hands and looked deep into his frightened eyes. "I'm not leaving. Do you hear me? Not as long as you need me." Theo hugged her neck tightly, and Nadia felt her chest fill with something she couldn't name. Perhaps it was love, perhaps it was purpose, perhaps it was simply the certainty that she had done the right thing. But not everything was resolved. Augusto was tormented. He barely slept. He spent his nights in his study, reviewing documents, making calls, trying to understand how he hadn't seen, how he had failed his own son so badly. One rainy afternoon, he found Nadia in the kitchen. "Can I talk to you?" Nadia nodded and stopped chopping vegetables. Augusto sat at the table, something rare. Men like him didn't sit in kitchens. But there he was, disheveled, tired, human. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to. I just did what was right." "But you did more than that. You saw what I didn't. You heard what I didn't. You saved my son." Nadia took a deep breath. "With all due respect, Mr. Augusto, what Theo needs isn't thanks. It's presence. He needs a father." The words landed like stones. Augusto lowered his head, and for the first time Nadia saw tears in the eyes of that man who seemed made of steel. "I don't know how to be a father. I never did." "Then learn. It's not too late." He looked at her, surprised by the firmness of this woman whom everyone treated as invisible, but who was, in fact, the wisest person in that house. That night, Nadia returned to the neighborhood with a lighter heart. Lais was waiting for her with dinner ready. "How was your day, Mom?" "Difficult, but I think it's getting better." "You're amazing, you know." Nadia smiled, kissed her daughter's forehead, and sat down at the table. She looked out the window and saw the city lights twinkling below, and she thought of Theo. She thought of Augusto. She thought of all the children who suffer in silence, and she promised herself she would never again stay silent in the face of injustice. Because silence might be safe, but courage is what changes the world. It was on a Saturday morning that everything truly began to change. Augusto woke up early, something rare for him. He went down to the kitchen and found Nadia making coffee. Theo was sitting at the table drawing in an old notebook. For the first time in a long time, the house seemed alive. "Good morning," Augusto said, his voice still hoarse from sleep. Nadia turned, surprised. "Good morning, Mr. Augusto. Would you like some coffee?" "I would, thank you." He sat down next to his son. Theo looked up, startled at first, but then returned to his drawing. Augusto sat there in silence, just watching the crooked lines, the chosen colors, the concentration on the little face. "What are you drawing?" Theo hesitated. "A house." "What house?" "The house where I want to live." Augusto swallowed hard. "And what's this house like?" Theo showed him the drawing. It was a simple, colorful house, with flowers in the window and a huge yellow sun in the sky. "Are there happy people in it?" "Yes. There's me, there's you, and there's Aunt Nadia." The words hit Augusto like a punch to the chest. He looked at Nadia, who pretended to be busy with the coffee, but her eyes were shining. In that moment, Augusto understood something he should have understood a long time ago. That money doesn't buy presents. That luxury doesn't replace love. That an empty mansion is just a beautiful prison. Later, he called Nadia for a talk. They sat in the living room, something that had never happened before. Boss and employee side by side, like two ordinary people. "Nadia, I want to make you an offer." She tensed. "What kind of offer?" "I want you to stay here, not as a housekeeper, as part of the family." Nadia frowned. "I don't understand." "I want to hire you as my personal assistant, to take care of Theo, to help me get his life, my life, back on track. You'd be like a sort of housekeeper, but with real authority. A fixed salary, full benefits, all legal, and a room here in the house if you want." Nadia fell silent, processing. "Why are you doing this, sir?" "Because I trust you." and because my son needs you. But he needs you more. I know, and that's why I need your help. I don't know how to be the father he needs. But you can teach me." Nadia took a deep breath. She thought of Lais, of their house on the hill, of the life she had built with so much effort. She thought of Theo, of his shy smile, his tight hug, the fear that still lingered in his eyes. "I accept, but with one condition." "What is it?" "That you truly change, that you are present, that you truly see your son, because I can take care of him, but I can't be you." Augusto nodded, moved. "I promise." And for the first time in a long time, Nadia believed a promise from someone in that world. In the following days, the household dynamic shifted completely. Nadia began to have a say in decisions about Theo. She organized a healthy routine for him, with scheduled times for play, study, and rest. She took the boy to the park, to the library, to places where he could simply be a child. And Augusto, little by little, started to show up. He ate dinner with his son. He read bedtime stories. He asked about his day. And with each small gesture, Theo opened up a little more. It was on one of those nights, while Nadia was tidying the kitchen, that she heard laughter coming from Theo's room. She paused, emotional, and listened. It was Augusto's voice making funny noises as he read a book, and Theo's laughter, loud, genuine, free. Nadia smiled, wiped away a tear, and returned to her work, because she knew this was just the beginning. That healing would take time, but that finally in that house there was hope, and hope, however small, is always the first sign that the light is returning. The news spread slowly but with impact. Claudia had been formally reported, and the case gained attention. The social worker assigned to Theo's case submitted a detailed report. Security camera footage was handed over to the authorities. Witnesses were interviewed. And Nadia's name began to circulate as the woman who had the courage to report what so many had chosen to ignore. But Nadia didn't want the spotlight. She didn't want recognition. She just wanted peace, and to see Theo smiling. One day, a journalist tried to enter the mansion to interview her. Augusto personally escorted him out. "Nadia is not a circus attraction. She is part of my family, and her privacy will be respected." When Nadia heard, she was surprised. No one had ever defended her like that. "You didn't have to do that, sir." "I absolutely did. You deserve respect, and I will make sure everyone knows it." It was then that Nadia understood that the real change wasn't just in Theo, it was in all of them. Weeks later, there was a court hearing. Claudia tried to defend herself, citing stress, pressure, being overwhelmed, but the evidence was irrefutable. The judge was clear. She would be permanently barred from any work with children and would face criminal charges for the abuse. When Nadia learned of the sentence, she didn't feel relief. She felt sadness. Sadness knowing that this happened every day, in thousands of homes, and that there wasn't always someone to report it. There wasn't always justice. But in this case there was, and that was a lot. One afternoon, Augusto gathered Nadia and Theo in the living room. "I wanted to say something to both of you." Theo climbed onto the sofa, curious. Nadia stood, still a little awkward with formalities. "I wanted to thank you both for giving me a second chance, for teaching me to be a better person." Theo smiled. "You're being a good dad, Dad." Augusto smiled, touched. "And you, Nadia, you saved my son. And you saved me too. So I wanted to give you this." He handed her an envelope. Nadia opened it slowly and saw a document. It was an employment contract, a decent salary, benefits, health insurance, all formally registered. But that wasn't all. There was also a key. "This key is to an apartment, small but comfortable, close by, for you and your daughter, if you want it." Nadia was speechless. Tears came without warning. "Mr. Augusto, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can. You deserve it. And I want you and Lais to have a safe place, without worries, without struggle." Nadia looked at the key in her hand. She thought of their house on the hill, the steep stairs, the leaky roof when it rained. She thought of Lais, of the girl's dreams, of the opportunities that were now opening up. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to accept something without guilt, because it wasn't charity, it was recognition, it was justice. That night, Nadia went home and told Lais everything. The girl jumped for joy, hugged her mother and cried with her. "We did it, Mom. We did it. We did, honey, together." And as they held each other under the roof they would soon leave behind, Nadia thought of all the invisible women in the world, all the housekeepers, cooks, ironers, nannies, all those who sustain homes without ever receiving their due value. And she wished with all her heart that one day all of them would be seen, respected, valued, because every woman who works with dignity deserves more than invisibility. She deserves justice. She deserves peace. She deserves to shine. 6 months passed since that stormy night. The Vasconcelos mansion was no longer the same. Teo's laughter echoed through the halls. Augusto ate dinner at home almost every night. And Nadia, now living in a simple but cozy apartment with Lais, went to work every day with a lighter heart. The apartment had 2 bedrooms, a sunny kitchen, and a small balcony where Nadia grew potted flowers. Lais had secured a scholarship to a better school. She dreamed of becoming a teacher, and Nadia, for the first time in years, allowed herself to dream too. On a sunny Saturday, Theo asked to visit Nadia's new place. Augusto took him personally. When they entered, the boy was enchanted by the flowers on the balcony. "Look, Dad, it's like the drawing I made." Augusto smiled, looked at Nadia, and murmured a silent, "Thank you." Lais prepared a simple lunch: rice, beans, roasted chicken, salad. Nothing fancy, but made with love. And it was there at that small table that 4 people from such different worlds sat together and shared more than just food. They shared stories, laughter, affection. Theo talked about his new school, where he finally had friends. Lais spoke of her future plans. Augusto confessed he was learning to cook, to make pancakes for his son on Sundays. Nadia just listened, her heart overflowing with gratitude. Later that afternoon, after Augusto and Theo left, Lais helped her mother with the dishes. "Mum, do you think things will keep going like this?" "Like what?" "Good." Nadia dried her hands and looked out the window, where the sun was setting in a golden glow over the city. "I think life will always have challenges, honey, but now we have more strength to face them, because we're not alone anymore." Lais hugged her mom from behind and rested her head on her shoulder. "I love you, Mom. You're the strongest person I know." Nadia turned and held her daughter's face between her hands. "I'm not strong alone, my love. I'm strong because I have you, because I have faith, because I know everything we go through has a purpose." That night before bed, Nadia took out a small old photograph she kept in her drawer. It was of her and her husband on their wedding day. He was smiling in a rented suit next to her in a simple dress. Nadia traced the image with her fingers tenderly. "Thank you for teaching me how to be strong," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me our daughter. And thank you for watching over us, wherever you are." She put the photo back, turned off the light, and closed her eyes. And for the first time in a long time, she slept with no weight on her chest. She slept peacefully, because Nadia Gomez wasn't rich. She didn't have a fancy degree. She didn't have an important last name. But she had something no amount of money in the world could buy: dignity, courage, love. And that's how this ordinary woman who just wanted respect showed that true brilliance isn't in gold, but in the soul. And you, what did you think of this story? What lesson did it leave you with? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. That way you won't miss any of our heartwarming stories every day.